Hello and welcome back to the Daily Balance podcast. I'm your host, Adean.
And I'm Brittany.
And today we're tackling a topic that often feels too heavy to hold, but it's too important to ignore. We talk a lot on this show about finding balance in our lives, but true balance isn't possible if we turn a blind eye to injustices happening right here in our own neighborhoods.
Our mission here is always the same, turning awareness into action. To understand why this matters, we have to look at the numbers. As we sit here in 2026, the latest data from the International Labor Organization is astonishing.
Okay, so have you seen the movies?
We've seen them.
Sound of Freedom in 2023, Taken in 2008 with Liam Neeson. You know, he has a particular set of skills. And how about the Oscar-nominated documentary, Born into Brothels in 2004? Human trafficking has grown into a $236 billion industry annually, a 37% increase in illegal profits over the last decade.
I wonder why.
It's not a left or right issue. It's not a black and white issue. It's a green issue. It's the ones with the money. Globally, nearly 50 million people are trapped in modern slavery. And right here in the U.S., the average age for a child who enters the sex trade, just 12 to 14 years old. 12 to 14 years old.
Babies, this is not a movie. This is real. This isn't just a global issue. It's a local economic engine fueled by exploitation. Today, we're joined by two powerhouses from Hope United Survivor Network, Mollie Weakland and Hannah Hopper. Their mission is to empower survivors of domestic violence, sexual assault, human trafficking, and elder abuse to restore their hope and strengthen the community by providing comprehensive, integrated services in one safe, centralized location to reduce barriers and increase safety.
We're moving past the movie tropes and getting into the grit of how we can actually disrupt these numbers. Let's bring in our guests, Mollie Weakland and Hannah Hopper. Welcome, ladies.
Welcome, ladies. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having us.
This message is so important. So important. So especially since everyone is talking about these infamous Epstein files, let's pull back the curtain on this world, if only for a few moments.
Ladies, we're going to talk a little bit about the landscape of human trafficking, okay? Let's talk about for those who only see human trafficking in the movies, like, what was it, Taken in 2008, with Liam Neeson. That kind of puts me in mind perfectly with this one, if anyone has seen that. What does it look like in our local communities today, Hannah? What does human trafficking actually look like?
So human trafficking now looks more like relationships being built. And what I mean by that is a lot of times it is a romantic partner. It might be a parent or caregiver, not as much as the stranger danger or the white minivan or white van that you're used to seeing. My disclaimer is always that certainly can happen and might happen. Just in our community, it looks a lot different, where traffickers and predators are targeting vulnerable communities in the form of a relationship in some manner. So that's what we're seeing.
Wow. Did you have anything you want to add to that, Mollie?
No, I from our conversations before, and Hannah kind of touched on this, a lot of times we'll talk a lot about the overlap of human trafficking and what may look like teen dating violence or may look like domestic violence or sex assault. So they all kind of, they overlap in some way or another. And like Hannah said, a lot of times there are relationships built. So if you're looking at someone in your life and questioning their relationships, or even looking at your own relationships and kind of evaluating those, just because you have built a relationship with someone or there's a relationship there between the victim and the perpetrator doesn't mean it's not human trafficking. It's not just that stranger, grabbing you from a parking lot or things like that. It can be very nuanced. And I think we'll talk more about that. I know Hannah is a subject matter expert. So,
Okay, good.
So, Mollie, from a marketing and awareness perspective, what is the biggest misconception the public has about how trafficking victims are recruited, do you think?
So I think it's a lot of that. It's kind of what we mentioned before. It is like the grooming of someone. So depending on sex trafficking or labor trafficking, it may look different, but a lot of times the misconception is that it could never happen to me because I'm aware of my surroundings, because I am safe when I'm online. But it just takes a moment of vulnerability for a trafficker to kind of infiltrate your safety net, so to speak. So staying vigilant, staying educated, making sure you recognize the red flags for yourself, but also for the people that you care about, is going to kind of help guide you in the right direction and keep you away from those misconceptions where, you're looking for a mark on your car or someone following you around. Not saying it doesn't happen, but it's far more likely, and Hannah probably knows statistically exactly, but it's more likely it's going to be someone that that's going to take advantage of one of your vulnerabilities, whatever that might be.
Wow. So, speaking of red flags, Hannah, as a social worker, what are some of those subtle red flags that maybe family and friends often miss?
Yeah, I think sudden behavior changes, that might present, a young person might be being more isolated, maybe wanting to spend more time online or with their phone, maybe not wanting to leave their phone. I think, too, it can look like a relationship in which might appear as controlling or just possessive, right? Like, I now want to spend all of my time with this person. I love this person so much. And I think it can look like being very protective. Maybe you have someone in your family that is normally more open and engaging in conversation about what their relationship, or maybe more excited about something they're experiencing, like in the dating world or whatever. And then if you notice that might be changing depending on who they're dating, who they're talking with, I think those are some of the subtle red flags where we just have to pay attention and ask uncomfortable questions, or just calling out, hey, this feels different than our interactions in the past about dating or meeting someone new. So it's going to be just little small changes in behavior over time that aren't particularly how they function historically.
Okay, well, we're going to talk a little bit about the path to recovery. Often, within maybe even 24 hours of the recovery, the psychological barriers and things of such. And why, you guys prioritize long-term clinical support over simple crisis intervention. Go ahead, Brittany.
We often hear about the rescue, but what does the first 24 hours of recovery actually look like for a survivor? Mollie, you think?
I think Hannah would be better equipped to answer this one. I'll just add quickly that we had a conversation with, I think it was on Friday. Hannah had a little meet and greet with several service providers in our area, and we kind of asked a similar question to some of them, and their answers really surprised me, because I think that having conversations like this is really important, because that recovery can't happen if people don't know the resources.
So true.
Even before the recovery or anything like that happens, the work that Hannah does and other organizations in our community is vitally important to kind of helping people understand that we are here to support. So I'll let Hannah answer kind of what those 24 hours look like.
Yeah, for the first 24 hours, what we focus on is physical safety and getting them to a safe location, making sure they're medically okay for a lot of different reasons. They could have long periods of time without being seen by a medical provider and really need to be seen. So obviously we make sure their physical health is good. We make sure that they have access to food, any immediate needs. So if they need a place to rest, if they haven't been able to have consistent rest, if they need food, if they need to shower, if they need anything to just feel like, I'm going to say a human, but just, in a safe, sound place. That's what we focus on in the first 24 hours. Instead of forcing them to talk about something that's really awful that has happened to them in those first 24 hours, we sort of ground them and try to make sure that they know that they are physically safe and that their health is okay for the time being, as that will always be the priority in the first 24 hours.
I can imagine they're flooded with every emotion imaginable in that first 24 hours, probably not knowing where even to turn to or who even to trust at this point. So what do you find are the most significant psychological barriers a survivor faces when they're trying to integrate into a normal daily routine?
I say there's a lot of things that probably contribute, but the bond that these individuals have to the people that are perpetuating this issue, trafficking, is really intense. And much like domestic violence, and it often, like Mollie said, will present like something else first. So it might present as domestic violence first. So these power and control dynamics that these survivors have lived with for years, probably. And even if it's not a year, even if you just have a week in this life, it's literally a rewiring of your brain and attachment to this person that causes harm, but also in your mind might have saved you in some way or might provide you with a resource that you have never had. So it's a constant back and forth, and this person is causing harm, but also this person is providing me things I've never had before. I didn't have the luxury of having. So it's truly that trauma bond that you are dealing with that is a barrier, because I think survivors constantly question if they are doing the right thing, where they've so much of their life have had to put a person before themselves and think about that person before they think about themselves. And so I think the barrier, just the biggest, is trying to meet the survivor where they're at and also trying to build that trust, because their whole life has been very different than what it is in that current moment. And so I think just being able to acknowledge that the survivor has this really complicated relationship with this person that caused harm, but also maybe they felt like they loved them, and the survivor might love this person. So just acknowledging sort of the nuances of that, and that, even though you love and care about this person, it's also okay for you to value your health and your safety and to make a choice for yourself.
And I think we talked about this a little bit last time, but Hannah shared something not just kind of in passing and mentioned that for a lot of the survivors that she works with, this is not the worst thing that's ever happened to them. And so keeping that at the forefront as service providers, that while it may seem like the worst thing you could imagine to have happened to you, it is not the worst thing that they've experienced. So being able to support them in unlearning some of those kinds of behaviors and those bonds and all of the things that Hannah has kind of touched on, I think it's important to note that that's, while we would never choose that, and they probably wouldn't either, it might not be this moment where you're like, freedom, how they may portray it in the movies, where it's like all of a sudden you are able to make your own decisions and do whatever you want. You are still very much unpacking a life that was trauma filled maybe before this. So very multifaceted.
I imagine not everyone coming out of that situation has a mom and dad loving arms, or someone happy to see them always on the other end of things. Because as you said, that may not be the worst thing to have happen to them. They may be coming from something even worse, but understanding that this is a bad place for them to be, and having that change that mentality within them, I guess that would be very difficult.
Yes, it is.
So, Hope United focuses on long term impact. Why is long term clinical support more critical in immediate crisis intervention?
So
Hannah?
I think for us, I don't think it's more critical by any means. I think it's just as critical. Because you have agencies that know how to respond in real time, but don't have the capacity and aren't able to support them over time. Healing is a journey, right? You're going to have your highs, your lows. It is not cookie cutter. What healing looks like to me is going to look totally different for Mollie. And knowing that survivors have the option to reach out to an agency that can be supportive in whatever capacity that individual needs is so important. If you need support 10 years from now, we're going to support you. If you need support right now, we're going to help you. So just knowing that you don't have to be in immediate crisis or have just left a situation to have support, and you deserve support the rest of your life,
Yeah.
right? So that there is no time limit, that we're never going to come back and say, oh, you no longer qualify for our services, because that's not how trauma works, and that's not how supporting, if we're truly in the work to support survivors, that's not how we want it to look either. You have certain agencies for different roles where crisis response is important, clearly very important, but so is this work, and we want to be here for as long as you need us and whenever you need us.
Excellent. So, this Mollie or Hannah, either one of you can take this one. How can the average person support a survivor's journey without being intrusive or causing re traumatization?
I think it all goes back to education. The more you know, the better you're going to be able to respond to the people in your life that may be experiencing something like this, whether it looks like domestic violence or human trafficking. I think that if, reaching out to even organizations like Hope United, we can go out in the community, we can provide education and resources to make sure. I mean, these are uncharted waters for most people. This isn't something that you wake up in the morning and think, how could I better support survivors of trafficking in my community? Because I think that impacts our feeling of safety, because we think, it doesn't happen here, it doesn't happen to me. But knowing that it is here and that it does happen in our communities, and making sure that we're educating ourselves, so we're educating our kids. I think that, especially when we talk about kids online and in schools, there are several examples of the work I know that Hannah has done over the years where where do you have a concentration of vulnerable people at schools? And so being able to get that education, if you're in a position where you work in a school or you're a resource officer or whatever, being a safe person, right, for kids, but also being able to provide education or resources to people. And so that's Hope United's mission, aside from just the service provision side of it, is making sure that from a community safety standpoint, we know better, so we do better, and we respond better ultimately.
And I want to touch on that too. Just Mollie said, being a safe person, but not just for children. Be a safe person for vulnerable communities, no matter what, or vulnerable people. If you are able to stand in the gaps and be supportive of people that might be targeted for these crimes, like the unhoused population, your at-risk youth, just people that might not be English speaking, they're just different communities in which vulnerabilities are targeted. And if you know how to be a safe person and desire to be a safe person in those spaces, you're already combating trafficking more than you know. And so that's just my call to people, is be a safe person, believe people when they say this is happening to them, and know who to call and turn to when they do say those things.
Excellent. Well, ladies, our tagline is turning awareness into action. And I found out about you guys through someone I follow on Facebook called Officer Udi. And I know You guys know who I'm talking about. Shout out to him. And that actually, I saw a reel or something online where he posted about you guys working with you. So how are local businesses, how can they traffic proof their environments? And how can parents talk about their children with online safety?
Hannah, you want to hit it?
Yeah, we can piggyback.
Yeah, we did. I think
I love it.
Yeah. So I'm going to touch, well, on a lot of different things probably, but the community can, just some practical ways is they can make clear statements about what they are going to put up with in their establishment. If it's a restaurant or anything like that, having clear statements on, we do not tolerate this behavior, similar like no shirt, no service, or whatever, like things like that, we make that known some way, somehow in your community that you're not going to tolerate controlling behavior or aggressive behavior or things like that. Get your staff trained, right, on recognizing red flags for human trafficking, for domestic violence. So people in your organization and community can spot it and know how to be supportive. And I think too, talking about online safety with your kids is important. It much like we encourage parents to talk about body safety, and there's clear things to talk to your children about, just so you can prevent child sexual abuse, right? I think the same is true for internet and online exploitation and trafficking. Have the hard, uncomfortable conversations that are age appropriate. It is adults' responsibility to keep children safe, and whatever parents, caregivers have to do so. I think that's important. You see a lot of different ideas, but having the conversations that you might interact with someone online that acts like they know you, but you don't really know who's behind the screen. Just having those real conversations about what it looks like, and how don't share your location, don't post pictures of yourself, don't tell anyone where you go to school, even if you think you might know this person, because you don't know who's on the other side of that screen. So just having age appropriate conversations, because while they originally might start out as a stranger, this online world is so fast and hard to keep up with that, people can build relationships online very quickly, a lot faster than they used to in person. So just trying to...
That's what most people are doing today,
are.
meeting and dating and getting married via online.
Yeah, they are. And, I say back in my day, I would go to the roller skating rink every Friday and live out
Yes, Hannah.
So, but now kids don't have to go to the roller skating rink to meet other kids or, like that kind of thing. They can go online. They don't have to go out
of the Roblox
or
Minecraft.
You have chat rooms, you have things like that. And there are communities online that make children feel seen. So make your child feel seen. Let your child be fully known and fully loved, because if they have a question or if they are looking for a place to fit in, they are going to find that exact space online. So just knowing that is a thing, having those hard conversations, and it is really uncomfortable. Just like body safety is uncomfortable, teaching kids and adults the correct terminology for body parts. It is weird and awkward, but you have to do it in the sake of keeping children safe. And the same is true for online.
Yeah, the alternative is worse.
Yeah.
So I guess this question is for Hannah. Awareness is a buzzword, but action is our focus. What is one thing a listener can do today that actually disrupts the trafficking cycle?
I'm going to sound so repetitive, but truly being a safe person, someone that is hypervigilant and knowing what to look for. And I don't mean jumping into safety or jumping into a situation that may be unsafe. That's not what I'm saying, but just knowing truly what red flags to look for, know exactly who to call, and always call if something in your gut is off. do not intervene. I'm not telling every citizen to intervene if you are not trained to do so, but just knowing the red flags, knowing how to report, and continuously being that safe person. Like I say, be a safe person for your friends so they can talk to you about a relationship that might not feel great for them, but they're not ready to identify as abusive. Be a safe place. It can be frustrating, hearing a friend or someone you care about return to a partner that you don't think is good for them, but being a safe person consistently, and showing up when maybe other people have turned their back on them, or maybe that's how they perceive it. So I sound like a broken record, but truly just being that safe person is going to mess with the big ecosystem that is trafficking.
And I think, kind of speaking of that, being able to disrupt a lot of what we talk about that traffickers are doing is online, behind closed doors. It's in the dark. It's places we don't go, we don't see. But January was Human Trafficking Awareness Month. If we flood our communities and if we flood our online presence as individuals, as organizations, shedding light on this subject, I think that it's going to make people uncomfortable, and hopefully it makes the right people uncomfortable, where they no longer think that Gaston County is a place that I can perpetrate these types of things, because there are people who are looking at this, they're looking for, everybody's more educated, so I can't move the way that I used to move. Sure. These parents are telling their kids, how to stay safe online. And that's ultimately, and as terrible as this is to say, it's going to impact the trafficker's bottom line, because that's what this business is kind of built on, right? It is a business. And so even if it's something as simple as wearing blue on Wear Blue Day, or it is sharing posts at Hope United, or like you mentioned, Kevin Udi shares on, some of that information makes people uncomfortable because it's true, because it's real. And because I think Hannah mentioned a lot of this it is much easier to perpetrate violence against people who don't have anyone there to speak up for them, right? So if we are shedding light on this, if we are eliminating that isolation factor, because we are standing up and saying we're safe, we don't care what language you speak, what community you came from, any of those types of things, we are here for you, because you deserve to have someone in your corner. So it could be just very simple, but it's amplifying that mission to make sure that traffickers don't feel comfortable perpetrating these types of crimes in our communities, in our schools, where we live, work, and play.
Absolutely. We need to be more disruptors in this, what we see here. So, Mollie, how can local businesses or community groups partner with Hope United to create trafficking-proof environments?
So I would say that Gaston County is incredibly lucky, and surrounding areas is incredibly lucky to have someone like Hannah, who works for an organization that all of their services are free and confidential. So whether you are someone that is looking for direct service as a survivor, or you are a business owner who is asking themselves that same question, you can reach out to Hope United. We can connect you with Hannah. Sometimes we tag team these things, and I'm not going to say we're the dream team, but I do enjoy when we go out and talk.
We're the dream team.
We've been known to take it on the road a few times, and the road has never been the same. But it is really like using whatever platform you have as a business owner, whether it is a restaurant or a clothing store, whatever the case may be, a service provider like in the beauty industry, something like that, where you reach out to us and we can tailor a safety plan, or come and educate your staff on some red flags very specific to what you do and how you are serving the community. So I think that's a great way. I think following Hope United on social media platforms, so that if God forbid someone is at your place of business and your spidey senses are going off and you're like, what could I possibly do? It could be something as simple as slipping them a Hope United pin, or putting their drink on a Hope United coaster. And so it's planting those seeds within the community that hopefully grow and create a bigger safety net.
Excellent.
I love that. So this could be for Molly, might be for Hannah. But for parents listening, how do we feel the talk about online safety and trafficking with our children without inducing like paralyzing fear?
Although I feel like they really do need some sort of healthy fear.
Yeah,
Right.
I would say fear is good.
Yeah.
It is a scary place, and I know Hannah has some very like technical tips on things. But if I am a parent speaking to other parents with firsthand experience, both in the work and also as a parent,
Yeah.
and we should be afraid. I mean, I
Yes.
talk to my son all the time about how to stay safe online, and he will bring me, can I get this app, or can I, and just having those conversations, and I'm like, no, and here's why.
Yeah.
I think, one time he told me that everyone at his school thinks I'm so uncool because I won't let him have Snapchat, and I was like, okay. I mean, it's just being
It is what it is. I'm not cool.
it is, yeah. And he was
Not
like,
today.
they're talking about you. And I was like, good.
Right.
But,
Tell them why.
but yeah, I think that as a parent, like making sure that they are a little bit afraid. Like it shouldn't be a place where they let down their guard and unleash all of their vulnerabilities on, to strangers on the internet. And so be afraid. But Hannah has probably some not so scary tips.
Well,
Give us some nuggets.
yes and no. I think that is a great point. I think you have to be real and direct with young folks, and especially as they get older, knowing the stakes, knowing there are real life examples across the board of where people get access to photos that they should not get access, and it truly shouldn't, but it ruins sometimes a person's trajectory, like impacts them in some way, shape, or form. And maybe just even from a mental health standpoint, right? Like it just is really hard, and you don't wish harm on anyone that you love and care about. And so I think that's where those hard conversations have to happen. But I also think that if you have those conversations from an early age and keep having them, not just one time, but repeated over, it might be annoying. They might roll their eyes. You might be the uncle parent, you might whatever, but having those repeated conversations, and to also not to remind your child and the children that you care about that this is not a conversation that we are ever going to get over, right? This is a reoccurring conversation. This is not a one-time thing. And that we as parents, like I said, it is our responsibility to keep children safe, and we've got to know about these apps. We've got to know the problematic places online. We've got to know what the internet is capable of. And as long as we do that and are having these conversations that are appropriate with youth, and I think that's the only way to do it. I think you've got to have those hard conversations, and you've got to talk to them just like, don't let anyone see you without clothes on. Don't let don't if you don't want someone to hug you, don't let them hug you. But the same is true online, right? If you don't want to talk to someone online, you don't have to. You can block them. If something makes you feel weird, report it, let me know, just identify the safe people in the child's life to also help build these conversations, right? Just keep having them. That's my biggest thing, is don't just have it one time, have it repeated and consistent over.
And I think,
No,
sorry, I think too, there's an element of shame that keeps people, especially young kids, they're kind of expected to be able to navigate these relationships online better than us. And who better to help them through shame online than the generation that lived through MySpace? I mean, it's true, right?
That's
like
true.
if you could unarchive some of my away messages, I think that like I would put a lot of people to shame. I do think that there is this factor of fear and shame that perpetrators use online to keep specifically kids quiet, and to think that they can't tell anyone. And so if you're having, as a parent or a caregiver, having these conversations with them, letting them know that that piece of it we'll deal with. That's fine, but your safety is number one.
Right.
And also, not just the parents, but the parents need to be communicating with even like the grandparents or anybody else. Your kids are not with you, whomever they may be with.
Right.
And also having those uncomfortable conversations with those people. If you do not want pictures of your children posted online, that is well within your right as a parent. And if people are not respecting boundaries that you set, then change the access that they have to your children in the sake of keeping children safe. And that might be an unpopular opinion, but we don't tolerate child abuse in any form in this world, and we've just got to make it clear.
Absolutely. So, what role does the demand side play in this? Like, how can we as consumers be more ethical in our daily lives to reduce the demand, Hannah? Or Molly?
Yeah, I think that is hard because we live in a very, everything is convenient, right? So we want to order things online. We want to get the most cheap, the most effective price we can get with quick shipping. Yeah, really. And so, I say shop local if you can. Shop and do your homework on companies that you are buying from. Or countries that
pay attention to what they're contributing to.
Yes, and companies and countries that these companies might be coming out of.
So, Molly, if you had a magic wand and could change one policy or law tomorrow, we got one, okay, to better protect survivors, what would it be?
Oh man, this is hard because when we think of like a law or policy, we think of justice, right? And I think that not every survivor sees prosecution or their offender being in prison for the rest of their lives as justice. So that's hard with like a sweeping policy because there's always going to be collateral damage. I think what they have done in other countries to restrict the access that children have to online, social media, and things like that, I think that is going. I'm very interested to see the long-term impacts of how that helps them developmentally, how it impacts the business of perpetrating violence against children or selling those images, videos, whatever that the case may be. I would love to see the data once this, I know it's kind of new. But again, like back to the MySpace days, it wasn't criminal, but good Lord, some of it should have been. We didn't have any business putting our business on the internet like that. And now it's just that times 20. And so I think that restricting sounds negative. I think protecting our children when it comes to access to social media, and I think we'll look back in years and be like, why didn't we do this? It seems like a no-brainer. If you ask my son, he's going to tell you that it would be criminal to restrict his access. But I do think that we will look back and say, why didn't we do something like that? Like, it seems like a no-brainer. It seems like if you want to stop the kind of human trafficking kind of stuff that we see online and sex trafficking, from adults and children, I think that we could have the change starts with the teens and the kids that are online and even younger. I mean, we have babies with iPads, but yeah, I think that would be very interesting to see the long-term impacts of that on not only crime, but mental health, just bullying, all of those types of things, because they don't ever get to cut it off. And that is something that I didn't grow up with. I left school and I went home, and the people I was around were the people I knew and loved and cared about me for the most part, So yeah, that would be interesting to see happen here. Probably incredibly hard to get past, but
yeah, when those stats come out, it'll be good. I'm excited to see that too.
Absolutely. Well, ladies, what amazing work you do. And we're so thankful to have you in our community providing this work, supporting those we know and those we don't know. That's a perfect place to leave it, Mollie and Hannah. And before we close, we want to extend our heartfelt thanks to both Mollie Weakland and Hannah Hopper. Thank you for the emotional labor that you guys put into every single day and for being the bridge from rescue to recovery for so many.
Thanks for having us.
The work you do is like amazing. And what you do for Hope United Survivor Network is truly the definition of turning awareness into action. And we are so honored you shared your expertise with our community today. And to move from knowing to doing, thank you, ladies, again.
Thanks so much, guys, for being here with us. We
Thank
do
you, guys.
appreciate you, okay? And we hope to have you back again in the future.
Definitely.
Before we head out, remember the numbers we discussed today. A $236 billion industry and 50 million lives.
But remember the most important number. 1, report to the National Human Trafficking Hotline at 1-888-373-7888. That's 1-888-373-7888. That call can change your life. You can download our free digital safety checklist on our website at www.thedailybalancemedia.com.
Hey guys, and don't forget to like and subscribe to our channels, especially our YouTube channel. It goes a long way in supporting us and these important causes to get this out to you. And the conversation doesn't just stop here. For our dedicated supporters, stick around for our after show called Tea Time.
Tea Time, you know what it is. It's where we connect with our closest community. If you want to be a part of our inner circle and get access to the after show, go to our website at www.thedailybalancemedia.com to subscribe and join our community for Tea Time.
Until our next episode, y'all, always remember, count it all joy. See you next time.
That's it right there.